Satoru Gojo was the strongest. Everyone agrees on that. Ask any character in Jujutsu Kaisen what Gojo is, and you'll get the same handful of answers. A monster, a weapon, a calamity waiting to happen. What almost nobody says, what almost nobody thinks, is the simplest answer of them all. He's a person. And that's the actual tragedy of Gojo Satoru. Not that he died, not even how he died. It's that for most of his life, the people around him couldn't see past what he could do long enough to notice who he was. Strip away the plot for a second and look at how the world of Jujutsu Kaisen actually talks about Gojo. You'll notice it almost always falls into one of three boxes. He's a monster, something to be feared, something unnatural, something that doesn't quite belong in the same category as everyone else. He's a tool, the strongest piece on the board, kept alive and deployed because he's useful, because he keeps the balance of power tilted in Jujutsu High's favor. Or he's a calamity, a walking natural disaster, something whose existence alone destabilizes the entire world, the way a volcano doesn't need to erupt to be dangerous. Notice what all three of those have in common. None of them are friend, none of them are teacher, none of them are man who is allowed to be sad or scared or lonely. They're all descriptions of function. What Gojo does, what Gojo threatens, what Gojo is worth. Not one word about what Gojo feels. That's the air Gojo breathes his entire life. And it's exactly why the handful of people who break that pattern matters so much. Start with Suguru Geto, because Geto is the clearest proof that it didn't have to be this way. Before everything falls apart, Geto isn't managing Gojo. He isn't handling him, isn't strategizing around him, isn't treating him like an asset the school happens to own. He's just his best friend. They argue, they joke, they carry missions out together as equals. And that's the key word, equals. Not the strongest and his assistant. Two people who trust each other. That friendship is exactly why Geto's fall hits as hard as it does. When Geto starts to see humanity as sorted into sorcerers and cattle, it isn't just an ideology shift. It's the loss of the one person who related to Gojo horizontally instead of vertically. After Geto, Gojo doesn't just lose a friend, he loses the only precedent he has for being seen as a person, not a position. Now here's the part people skip past because it happens with the character most viewers barely register, Ichiji. The barrier technician holding the barrier during Gojo's fight. He's not a main character, he's not powerful, he's not going to get a flashback arc. And yet, in his one real moment, he doesn't talk about protecting a strategic asset. He talks about not letting this man down. He puts everything he has into holding that barrier, not because Gojo is the strongest piece Jujutsu Society has, but because in that moment, to him, Gojo is someone worth that kind of effort. It's such a small scene, it's easy to blink and miss it, but that's exactly the point. Even a completely minor character like Ichiji, someone with no personal history with Gojo, instinctively understands something that the higher-ups never did, that Gojo deserved to be fought for as a person, not maintained as equipment. And then there's Yuji and Yuta, the two people who carry this idea all the way to the end. Watch their faces when Gojo dies. Not the shock of losing the strongest sorcerer alive, not the panic of who's gonna protect us now. It's grief. It's personal, specific grief. The kind you only have for someone who mattered to you, not the mission. And after he's gone, both of them say out loud, almost nobody else in the story ever bothered to say while he was alive, that people never understood Gojo, that he had feelings, that he was allowed to be scared or lonely or tired just like anyone else, and that treating him purely as a means to an end, as the guy you point at Sukuna and hope for the best, was never right. Yuta goes further than that, saying that he will take the weight of that failure and put it onto himself. He knows Yuji can't carry it, not in the state he's in. So Yuta does, because his powers let him, and because someone has to. It's not really about strategy at this point. It's about refusing to let the last word on Gojo's life be the tool that broke. That's the actual devastating part of Gojo's story. Not the fight, not even the death itself. It's when a tool breaks, you throw it away and move on. Nobody mourns a broken drill, and for most of the people around Gojo, that's basically what his death is. A resource loss, a variable removed, a calamity finally handled. But for Yuji and Yuta, it's not that. It never was that. It's losing a person they cared about, someone whose emotions mattered to them, whose loneliness they could actually see, whose worth was never about what he could do for Jujutsu Society. That contrast between how the world saw him and how those few people saw him is the whole tragedy in one image. The strongest sorcerer who ever lived, surrounded by people his entire life, and genuinely known by almost none of them. Gojo Satoru wasn't lonely because he was too strong to relate to. He was lonely because everyone decided his strength was the only thing about him worth relating to. Geto saw him as a friend. A nameless barrier technician saw him as someone worth everything he had. And Yuji and Yusa saw him, at the very end, as exactly what he always was and what almost nobody let him be. A human being. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.